Divorce lawyers of Reddit, what's the most outrageous reason someone filed for divorce? My client was the outrageous one, so my heart went out to his poor wife. He had OCD, which manifested primarily financially, so he made their lives a penny-pinching hell. Examples: he was obsessed with avoiding unnecessary driving, wear and tear on the car, gas expenses, so he cut the whole family's hair at home and never let them eat at a restaurant or go to the movies. Weirdest of all, he kept one toilet paper roll on him at all times and you had to get one square from him before you could go to the bathroom. He never gave more than one square. Wife finally got fed up and left him when 1. He gave her bangs during an in-home haircut, and 2. Their daughter was so traumatized by the toilet paper thing they couldn't potty train her. Also, he hated paying his divorce lawyer bill. He was also an old-fashioned mega-Catholic who considered divorce a deadly sin. He viewed my whole job as an unnecessary and sinful expense. Failed exorcisms. Client had an inner ear condition that caused chronic vertigo, but symptoms could be treated with medication. Husband was an evangelical who was convinced his wife 1. Had become possessed and that her vertigo and general crankiness with his methods were evidence of demonic possession. 2. The medications she was taking was enabling the devil to hide inside her. And 3. The only proper recourse was to try various methods of exorcism. He would hide her meds until she got dizzy and then try various methods of exorcism. This included sweating it out, put under blankets while incapacitated and locked in a room full of space heater. Freezing it out, pretty much the reverse with AC, fans, and bags of ice. Surprising it out, he would jump out and scare her like it was the hiccups, but instead of yelling boo, he would recite the Lord's Prayer or Psalms. The final straw was that he tried to surprise it out of her by pushing her down the stairs when they were heading out for dinner. Note: this guy was some type of executive and they still went out to dinner after the stairs incident. She asked for the divorce at an Applebee's that night. I have often tried to picture that conversation, as she was adamant that he was a total sweetheart and never acted out of malice or anger. I worked as a paralegal for a divorce lawyer. Case analysis was one of my main responsibilities. I shit you not. A recently married couple, of 2 years, broke it off because the husband would not stop feeding the dog. The dog got outrageously fat. Apparently she saw connection between the dog and future children. Friend of mine divorced his then wife because she would only speak French when her family would come over. She was Spanish, as was her family. To add, her family spoke English, French, and Spanish. He could only speak Spanish and English. She got bored of being married to him. Her family basically talked shit about him whilst he was there. Was only when he recorded a conversation whilst they were there and got it translated he found out what was going on. He was frustrated by her hoarding. She was frustrated by his utter uselessness. He filed for divorce, and she was my client. Her prized possession was a room or 2 full of scrapbooking materials. His prized possession was a yard full of junk cars that he never worked on. They had no children and no real assets. They hated each other more than any 2 people I'd ever met, and the only terms they would agree to were these: he gets the scrapbooking stuff, and she gets the cars. My client also took the house, as he had no income and didn't want it anyway. It was the shortest divorce decree I ever drafted. I intentionally squeezed it onto 1 page, and the judge and I had a good laugh over it. Once the decree was signed and filed, she hauled all the scrapbooking stuff to the yard, and he removed it to the dump. She then called a junk shop I referred her to and had all of his cars removed from the yard. Edit: these 2 also fought over a toilet brush, as he didn't want to have to buy one when he moved out. I politely instructed my client to give him the goddamn toilet brush. Not me, but a friend. My mum has divorced her husband because his mother still coddled him at age 40, with his consent. They lived with his mother, common in Asia. By coddle I mean that she would walk straight into their room after his shower and powder his back for him. They couldn't lock their bedroom door because his mother would come in as and when she wanted. If they locked the door, she would knock repeatedly asking what they were doing. Lol, what would they be possibly doing? Playing poker? I knew a guy from a high school job who divorced his wife of 2 months because she would sleep with a nightlight, but he could only sleep in total darkness, as they apparently never lived together until after getting married. He hated her nightlight so much that he would often sleep on the couch instead, but sometimes he would claim the bed for himself and lock her out of the bedroom for the night. This was an eccentric late 40s man working at a Burger King who acted like all the other high school co-workers were his best chums, and often told us these weird stories. I'm glad I don't work with him anymore. I'm an intern, but the judge I work for used to do divorce work. He has some crazy stories, but this one is probably the most outrageous, though the divorce was pretty justified. Every morning this couple would sit in the bathroom together while one of them had their morning dump. One would sit on the toilet and the other on the rim of the bathtub. This particular morning the wife was on the toilet and husband on the edge of the tub. They started to argue about their relationship, so the wife reaches down, pulls her tampon out and flings it at husband. I'm told the tampon stuck for a brief second to his forehead before sliding off. He filed for divorce that same day or the next. Friend of mine divorced his then wife because she would only speak French when her family would come over. She was Spanish, as was her family. To add, her family spoke English, French, and Spanish. He could only speak Spanish and English. She got bored of being married to him. Her family basically talked shit about him whilst he was there. It was only when he recorded a conversation whilst they were there and got it translated he found out what was going on. My douche cousin told his wife she had 3 chances to give him a son. Daughter was born first. Strike 1. Son was born second. Then they find out the boy can't eat gluten. So my cousin divorced her and has made 0 effort to see his kids. Edit. I remembered something else he did. He would take off work and instead of spending time with the babies or her, he'd tell her, just act like I'm at work and do all your normal stuff. Then he'd watch TV all day. I am a lawyer that handles quite a few divorces, among other things, and I've seen all sorts of reasons for marriages ending. The only thing that is consistently true, and relevant to this question, is that it is never for just one reason, and it is never one-sided. In fact, I've started telling potential clients in our initial interview that I am well aware that I am going to uncover some dirt on my client in the process, not to scare them, but to put their mind to ease that I've seen worse. The fact that you haven't been 100% an angel up to this point doesn't scare me, and I'd rather find out about it from my client beforehand than later on from their spouse at the worst possible moment. All this is just to say that when you hear about people divorcing over one stupid argument or mistake, usually that's just the straw that broke the camel's back. That said, some of the lighter straws I've seen include a guy who is 100% convinced that his wife, our client, is actually a lesbian in love with his sister and just using him as a cover, but he also claims she is having sex with me to pay for her legal fees, and with every male whose phone number is in her call history. A woman who is divorcing my client because he was too sad after his father died last year. My client had to break down her door to get his father's ashes a few weeks after he left the house, and she refused to let him back in or give them to him, and a woman who claims my client was emotionally abusive towards her because he refused to yell at her, and sat in silence ignoring her when she screamed at him. He has this recorded, time-stamped for the dates and times she insists the incidents occurred. and she's listened to them and his complete silence as she goes on tirades and insists this proves her point that he was emotionally distant and abusive. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If you liked today's video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing for future videos. If you want more right now, click on one of the cards on the screen to watch another one of my videos. Thanks again for watching. Please stay safe everyone, until next time.